first ever Natural Philosophy Series cooking class. This is not the first time we've done a cooking class, but it's the first one of a new series where we're doing them on a regular schedule. And this class is going to be posted.
Annie is actually one of our cooking instructors over there,
Yep.
so you'll see her once a month. And then we have 2 others that will be joining.
Yeah, so these classes are going to be posted on our website. So anything you say will be recorded for future posterity. So today's topic is going to be Amy's sort of modified recipe. This is something we started with. Why don't you explain the origin of this recipe?
Well, we have gone in and out of gluten. We have, I think there's a place for wheat. I do think that that belongs in our diet if it's the right kind of wheat. And that's a whole different topic. And how you eat it. That the way the wheat is prepared is important. But we have gone through periods where we're experimenting. We've fed a lot of people a lot of different diets, and we wanted to be versatile to be able to take care of anybody, whatever their concerns were. And so I have been an exploratory chef, I guess is what you'd say. I've tried lots of things that have failed and lots of things that have worked. And this is one that has worked. Everywhere we take this, people want the recipe. And so what we've done is we've taken the base recipe and expanded it so it can be any number of things. It can be a dessert bread, it can be go along with an Indian meal or a Mexican meal or an Italian meal, or you can make a chocolate version of it, or you can do, and it'll be a little different. And this recipe, I'm going to give you like the quintessential, the herb buckwheat millet, the one that's on your front page. That is the one that we use most places. That I've given you ideas for how to put recipes together after that. We can go over that. The essence seasoning is just for fun. You can find that online. That is by Amaro Lagos, I think that's how you say his name, and he's a famous chef. And that's our choco seasoning replacement. So that's what we put in if we're doing like a Mexican version of flatbread, that's what I put in. And you just do it to taste. There's really no one right or wrong way. So, that's where we got started. We were trying to feed our family when we were on the off seasons of no gluten. And then we've just had years of feeding other people, and so-and-so's coming for dinner and they can't have this, what are we gonna make? So that's how that started. The first ingredient we have is 1 cup raw buckwheat groats. And the reason, if you go down to the market, the reason we just sell everything in its whole form. We don't sell flours. We do have a few powders because there's no other way that you can sometimes. It's really, really hard to get those things. But things that can be easily ground into your own, we just sell the whole thing. And the reason being that they've done a lot of studies that indicate within just hours after you grind something, begins all the oils, the natural oils start to evaporate. Within 3 days, you've lost almost 100% of the oils. And when the oils are gone, then the flours begin to go rancid. So if you want coconut flour, we'll send you something close to it. You can get coconut flakes, and then you can powder them. And if you want buckwheat flour, you start with the groats and you powder it. And that way, when it's in its whole form, you also have the option to sprout it. Most of the time we sprout our food. Most everything we eat is sprouted. The salad dressings, this salad dressing is a sunflower, and I didn't put it on the ingredients, but I could tell it to you after if you're interested. If you taste it and you like it, it's really easy. This is sprouted, like growing tails, sunflower seed. So this is really high ranking in nutrition. This one is soaked, so the phytates and the enzyme inhibitors have been released, but it hasn't entered into a long tail sprouting stage. So we have varying levels of nutrition. And maybe you want to comment on that a little bit, sprouted versus non-sprouted, or do you want me to just keep going? We haven't.
No, let's talk about it.
Okay, so
conceptually,
and this goes back. I'm going to fill him in. Why we are selling things in the whole form is so that they can choose. You can choose to sprout them or not choose to sprout them.
No, we're not completely gluten-free, but we are when we want to be, and it's nice to know which grains do what. Anyway, so the grains, if we take these and we use them every single day, And we feed it to our kids for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and usually in some sort of ground up cooked form. We're not very close to a living, natural, balanced food. We're going a little too far in the process. And we talk a lot about, well, I don't buy processed food. But then you buy perfectly good whole food, and then you process the heck out of it in your kitchen. And it becomes processed food right as you do all these things to it. So we do a lot of tricks. If we're gluten intolerant, for example, then we can steer clear of the wheat and we can use substitute grains. But grinding these up into a flour and baking them creates the same sort of problem, but a different sort of sensitivity is ultimately going to arise. Celiac disease or gluten intolerance is a problem coming from wheat flour that has not been prepared properly. So we do these tricks. Now we're going to, usually if we have time, we're going to soak these for a little bit, which helps release the phytic acid.
And you can 6 hours even. The longer you get them in the sprouting process, obviously the more phytates you're releasing, the more enzymes you're activating and eliminating some of the problems that create everyone has gut problems. And there's so many problems, like just everybody's got these problems, and we're just not feeding our. It's soak.
Yeah.
Rinse, blend.
Because we're working with a blender, we don't have to dry it and grind it.
And here's one other thing quickly. I might get to this. For today, I did not sprout these grains. I sprouted some things. I want you to kind of get a feel for different things. We did not sprout these to put in the breads you're getting today. And my feeling with the buckwheat and the millet, obviously if you sprout it, you're going to increase the nutrition a lot. The thing that my understanding of buckwheat and millet is it is lower phytate, much lower than other grains, especially like oats. Oats have a very high phytate content. One of the most, it takes 24 hours to and even after 24 hours, you're still going to have some remaining phytate. So these are a lot safer. If you're in the kitchen, what am I going to make for dinner? You don't know, but you open the cupboard and you have just a handful of these things. This is going to be okay. If you're eating it every day unsprouted, or if you're eating it every day, it's not going to support you. But as a dinner, for here and there, or it's going to be a good thing to have, even if you don't sprout it. You're going to be on the safer side with these grains. Does it expand?
When you
sprout it? Well, when I'm talking about sprouting these for baking, you don't even start to see a tail, although buckwheat sprouts really quick. After about 6 hours, you'll start to grow a tail. So buckwheat, you only need about 6 hours of soaking, and then you rinse it. It might expand to another quarter the size again. It's not expanding a lot. Just put it in a bowl, cover it with water, and you'll be fine. Yes, Kimberly.
Can you take a few bags of that and sprout it to the way you want it, and it's perfect, and then dehydrate it and store it in the dehydrated
We
form?
do gallons at a time. Gallons. Like we do huge batches, because then it's like your pantry is full. It's not like you have to do 2 cups at a time, and it's just too labor intensive to do small amounts. Do a large amount if you can, and then even better, put it in the freezer or refrigerator.
But you
is
still
really
don't want to
good.
grind it until you write out how to
Don't
use it.
grind it until you absolutely need it. If you grind it, put it in the freezer to preserve the oils.
Once you sprouted it, treat it like a live food, not a dead one,
Even
or
if
a
it's
dormant one.
dehydrated. But I will, if I know I'm going to use it within the month, I'll just keep it in a glass jar, those gallon glass jars in the shelf. And I don't refrigerate it in that case, if I've dehydrated it.
Okay.
How long
Yes.
will it last that way?
You know,
Sprouted it in a
I
big
think it
vat.
will last.
Long enough to use it. Each grain is going to have a different property.
Yeah.
The temperature in your home is going to affect that.
I've had it go. We
And
don't.
how long you actually got to soak and how far it got in the process.
Yeah.
But anywhere from weeks to months, you're going to be totally fine. Once you grind it, now you've got a lot shorter amount of time, hours, maybe a day. You've already started to lose a good amount of what was in there. is it's been pulverized, the surface area has been increased, the oxidation is happening much more rapidly, as well as the potential for evaporation, which is taking the oils out of it. So now that the food has been processed, its life quality is
My experience,
fleeting
Christina,
quick.
with that is if you sprout it and dry it and stick it on your shelf, it'll last for, we've only had it last, you go through it faster than you'll find out if you need it. It'll last a few months. It might last even up to a year. At that point, you might start losing some nutrition, but I can't say for sure because I've never had it last longer than
So
a few
sprouting
months.
it and drying it still retains its,
It's
Yeah.
live,
It's still
you've
live.
given it life.
okay.
You've
So it's
activated
still
the,
as nutritious as it was when you first did it.
yes, more, because
More
now
nutritious
the
now, yeah.
enzymes have, the enzyme blockers have been released. It will be able to, you just can absorb it. You release the phytates and the enzyme inhibitors, the things that don't allow your
So,
enzyme.
you have these stuff that's sitting in the pantry. You can have a lot of it on hand. It lasts for years. You bring it out of storage, you soak it, you start enlivening it, you get your flatbread. Now you go to the fridge and you pull out these odds and ends that need to be eaten, but nobody really wants to eat them. Cut them, shred them, dice them, slice them, because they're going to go onto the flatbread. And they're going to add the life, the alkalinity, all the stuff that we really need to balance this out and make it even more nutritious.
So what we call this bread is really part of a transitional diet. Ideally, we would be eating all live foods that our body doesn't have to create a heavy enzymatic process to break down. When I was on a fully raw diet, I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning, like bouncing out of bed, and because I had so much energy left, because 60% of my body's energy wasn't devoted to digestion. And so after a couple weeks in, I just had so much energy. And you say, well, why don't you live like that all the time? Well, that's a whole other story. But what I learned is that the more raw and the more live you can feed it, including fermentations. Fermentation is a live food. The less work your body does, and the more life you give. So acidic is death. Acidic foods is death. Live foods.
Evaluating the food items and the recipes and the combinations that end up becoming your meals, you need to consider the 4 qualities of life: light, air, water, and mineral. We want these 4 things in balance. So if we take an apple off the tree, it's got this, it's got all of this in it. It's got the light from the sun, it's alive, it's respirating, it's moist, and it's infused with the minerals from the ground. This is a well-formulated meal in this apple. We take the apple and dehydrate it to preserve it for later use. We've changed it a little bit. And I don't want to say it's become terribly unhealthy at that point, but we have taken a little bit of that perfection out of necessity. And we need to be aware of that, and always looking to try to bring that back to balance when we recombine it in the form of dinner. So think about these 4 elements as you're going, and you'll start to have a lot of insights into bringing this balance.
Like, for example, if you dehydrate an apple, you've just removed the water aspect from it. So when you eat a lot of dehydrated foods, you better make sure that you are well hydrated, because it will start to pull your water. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we
have
all
to have
know this
everything in
because we've all done
balance.
it, right?
So the light, the air,
Air.
water, and earth, that is a food in its perfect form. We don't live in a perfect world. We're trying to get there. So we're getting our foods closer. So the bread, added with things that have a perfect, like the light, the air, the salads, the greens, the fresh stuff, is a good meal. It's a great meal. Let's go ahead. Let's show you how easy this is. I should have said we could time it. It really is less than 5 minutes to put this together. You just take, I've got my 3, I've got a tablespoon, a teaspoon, and a cup. And this makes a pretty good amount. You might consider having it your first time, or you might want to make the whole thing. It's not a really great keeper bread. It will, it will make great croutons if you kind of dry it out, but it's not like a soft Pillsbury bread that's gonna sit on the shelf for a long time and never go bad. So a cup of raw buckwheat groats. Honey, I'm gonna let you do this because the recipe's right there.
Okay.
I've done this so many times, I'll see how it is for somebody else to do it.
I've never done it. So we'll see how this goes.
1.5 cups millet. And if you don't have a great blender, if you soak the grains first and then rinse them, a pretty crappy blender will do it. You'll just have some chunks. You'll have a few, but you know, the birds eat the millet whole. We
Yeah.
can, eat like the birds, feel like the birds fly, So,
If you want to fly, eat like the birds.
so 1.5 cups of that. And some water.
You mentioned it doesn't keep very well. Have you tried freezing it?
I haven't, because.
I know that can still dry things
It'll
out,
dry it
but
out a little bit, but here's the trick. If you froze it for like a pizza use later where you put other stuff on it and kind of baked it again, it would probably be
it
awesome.
would dry, yeah.
I have never tried freezing it.
And then my other thought was maybe to put it in some sort of bread pudding-ish type of thing to,
You know what? It would be really good like that.
so there are
And
ways to save it if it's dried
Especially
out.
like the dessert kinds. And if you look at the dessert recipes, there's really, if you have the basic recipe, you can do anything. And sometimes you may be like, oh, I shouldn't have added that extra banana. Like maybe you want 2 bananas, you want a stronger banana flavor. Or you may feel like, oh, it needed a little more something dry in there. It's worth playing around with, just because you can come up with some really fabulous
Put the
creations.
onion in the- no.
Yep, I put the whole onion in. And it doesn't matter what kind of onion. So the recipe you're looking at is like the Italian
I need to
version.
have them sliced.
Oh,
have
yes,
them.
go ahead, go to the next one.
This is a raw sesame oil that we're going to use. So you can use any oil you want pretty much. We're going to do 6 tablespoons of this.
Have you tried it with coconut
I
oil?
believe we have. We've done coconut, haven't we? We've done coconut oil before, haven't we?
You can do any oil you want, especially for if it's a flavor that you like with the Thai curry or with the sweetbreads. I definitely use coconut oil because it has such a lovely flavor, and coconut oil retains its nutritional properties at higher temperatures. So it's a great choice. Yep.
While you're measuring, I just want to mention, I haven't used it for a long time, but I used to use this emerald seasoning things. And instead of the 2 tablespoon salts, I just used 2 teaspoons, and nobody ever complained.
Really.
So it was a way,
So
you can cut the salt way
salt out.
down and it's still delicious.
Sure.
And we're going to get to that. The base is pretty simple, and then you can season this any way you like.
And one time you'll make it and you're like, that was awesome.
And you'll wonder what you did.
And then you'll wonder what you did and you can't recreate it. But the last time I made it, I didn't used to put nutritional yeast on the top. That's totally optional. But the last time I made it for a dinner party, I sprinkled just a little tiny bit of nutritional yeast on the top with a little sprinkling of salt. You can cut out the salt in it and sprinkle it on the top, and it hits the taste buds first. And I still have one of those girls begging me for the recipe. I just emailed it to her this morning. It was just so yummy. And then another time I tried just cutting olives, and that's where those directions really add whatever you want.
Nutritional yeast is cheating, though.
It is. Try it without it,
It's
so you can
too
see.
easy, so try to challenge yourself a little.
If you add nutritional yeast to anything, it ends up tasting really good. So yeah, try it without, and then try it with.
But you can use it if you want to. That was garlic powder we just added, and you can do
And
whole
usually,
garlic.
oh, here's another trick that I didn't write on the paper. If you think about this enough in advance, if you will cut up, you can put in as much garlic as you want, but if you will cut those cloves and just let them soak in the water, the 3 cups of water, your recipe will have a really beautiful garlic undertone. But it just really enhances the flavor. So you soak those garlic cloves, chop them up and put them in the water, and then just pour the whole thing in a few hours later when you're ready to make it. Also, that's a really good way to make a homemade antibiotic. You just chop up garlic, put it in water, take the garlic out and drink the water.
So that was basil. We don't have any rosemary on hand. We're gonna put a little drop of rosemary oil in. One or just one drop.
I do this a lot. If I don't have the right herb or the right thing, I just use the oil. If it's make sure it's a therapeutic grade. You have a good therapeutic grade
What do I
oil
put
that
in
you
the
cook with
pan?
it. I brought them. Here they are. And another suggestion, if you find you like this bread, and you go to a store and you buy a little thing of herbs and it costs you like $4, especially if you get organic ones, it'll be like $6. And you're using 6 teaspoons of oregano, you're gonna blow through herbs really fast. The best way to buy herbs is in bulk. It just is. And these are even from the market downstairs. And I just, like that was maybe like $1 or something. So cheap. So.
And fresher.
Yes, these are very high quality herbs. You can make teas out of these. These are just beautiful. And so don't buy them in those little jars because they're totally ripping you off and you don't know, especially if they're not organic, you don't know if they've been radiated. Most of them have. So just buy them, even get with friends and buy them in bulk and then a pound at a time and then take them home and put them in glass jars.
This is the time then that I'm at. I'm glad I got at least one
Salt.
laugh though. I got the salt.
Okay, we're good then.
Okay, so that's it. You just
After you do this once or twice, it really will go even faster than that.
put it in. What do you do it on? Smoothie?
I just go on whole juice, just blend it until it's a batter, kind of a smooth batter. And it's okay if there's a little bit of a grit to it. It's really okay. And if you don't have hold the top, because I don't know if that's the good top. That's not the good top. And if you leave some chunks in there, that's okay too. If you don't have a really awesome blender, just soak the grains first for a few hours to soften them and then blend them. And it's okay to have some grit or some leftover grain. It's really okay. It's kind of like having a little bit of cracked wheat in a bread.
This is the end result, and if you have your stuff ready, you can be at this stage in about 2 to 3 minutes
It's
if you're
really
prepared.
thin. It's a really thin batter. Maybe you want to show them so they can see what it looks like.
Okay.
And I like mine thinner because it gets more crackly. After you bake it, the top will really crack. Like it'll just look like it's going everywhere. Cracks all, and you can see it on the breads over here. The thinner your batter, the more it'll crack. It's really nice. I like that a lot. You don't, and this is a personal preference. I like my batter. I put less than a 1/4 inch deep in your pan. I like it really thin. If you get it too thin, it'll just brown and turn into like crackers. So you don't want it too thin, but like, can you see my fingers? I mean, it's almost even less than a 1/4 inch deep. And it gives it, because buckwheat has this texture when you cook it. It doesn't ever really feel cooked. It's kind of gooey a little bit still. And you'll kind of see that in the bread. It's not the same thing as using wheat. It doesn't have the same properties of gluten. And so if you keep it kind of thin, you have less of that tendency of kind of a gooiness. And some of these are a little more gooey. You'll see, you can kind of look at the different slices. But it's, keep it thin, and then, now here's the must, and I put this on there with an exclamation point. You must put it on parchment paper. If you do not, you will not get it out of your pan. You'll be scraping that pan for days. You have to use parchment paper. I learned that the hard way. A couple times I kept making it, I'm like, what's wrong with this bread? And then I realized that it's just what.
So anyway, you'll get your pan, you'll get your parchment, you'll pour it in, you put it in the oven. We were going to have a cardboard oven, and then we were going to put it in, and then get one of but we didn't have enough time to get it all worked out. Bake it for 40
minutes,
40 minutes.
375. It's all there on the paper.
And this morning we were doing one, and it went a little long.
A couple of them went a little long, so you can try the long versus the not long.
But our little boy was eating it, and he was saying they liked it better because now it a crunchy.
cracker.
It was soft, yet it was like a cracker. So he would.
It's open for, I'd be so interested if you guys play with it and you find a version that you love and you wanna tell me what it is. I'd love to know your version. And so we have,
Okay.
that makes it more substantial
Well,
for men.
It's not always men, but it usually is men who need the food to be a little heavier. They're used to eating heavier, and it takes time to transition away from these things, which is the whole point of transitional food. We get lighter, we get better, and yet, if we want to eat 2 or 3 pieces to kind of nail things down, they can use as much as they need, and they can feel pretty good. So in the earlier days, just having the bread to begin with was, if Amy made a salad, yeah, that was hard. If we could add some bread to it now, it's a lot better. And then we learned a little trick with, these are pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds. And we actually toasted these in the stove this morning.
Stove top, just put them in a cast iron pan. Let them get hot, and they'll start to pop. When they start to pop, you add a little bit of water, not a lot, and some salt. And then you just let them, keep stirring them, and you let them dry
Yeah.
out again. Now, these are not sprouted, but you can do it sprouted.
Yeah. You can sprout them and dry them. There's a lot of possibilities. This one was the fastest, so we thought we could throw it in. But essentially, with a nice nut-based salad dressing, with the bread, and with these, there isn't any guy who can, he's not justified in complaining. If he still complains, he's faking it. He's
Or he just has a heavily emotional attachment
yeah.
to meat. And that's
Maybe
what you
he's
find.
complaining because it's different, but he can feel just fine on this. Or, women can be this way too. And it tastes really good. A roasted seed, most people know it tastes really
In
good.
fact, I'll make a whole batch, and if Josh is hungry, he'll come in. It becomes a snack food.
Yeah.
If your wife tries it and you like it, you'll probably be requesting it, because it's a nutritional snack. It's not gonna, you don't wanna live on it,
Yeah.
but you could sprout them. If you sprout them and salt them, use our salad dressing recipe. This is based on one of Annie's, actually. This is a takeoff of one of hers that I fell in love with. And so this dressing, and this is really, the dressings are so forgiving. This one especially. So I will soak sunflower seeds overnight, and that at least gets the sprouting process started. They're germinating, they are, that you can rinse off the phytates, and you're in a great place. If you soak them even longer and then start sprouting them, they will still work as a dressing, and just let them get a tiny tail. Sunflower seeds will sprout pretty fast, and you just want, not till there's green on the tail, just till there's a little tail coming out, and they are truly sprouting. That's the stage I got these in. Otherwise, you can just soak them, rinse them, throw them in. So I did 1 cup of raw sesame oil, and I love sesame because it has such a neutral undertone in dressings. So 1 cup of, and this makes a lot, so you might want to half it. I'll just tell you off the top of my head what I did. 1 cup of sesame oil, 1 cup of sprouted sunflower seeds, 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar, and I love that because it'll continue to ferment. Like it'll continue the livening process. And then I did, in salt is to taste, 1 to 3 teaspoons of salt. And as you add more things, you might change your mind. And I put a whole head of garlic in. Even if it's a huge head, I think in this dressing, the more garlic, the better. And my kids love it, and they don't know that they're getting all these antibiotics. Like you'll feed it, I fed it at a women's function this week. And I had almost every woman there just say, "This is delicious, what's in this?" And I just said, "Oh, you don't want to know, it's really good for you." and then they're like, it's a good answer. So, okay, so we got the oil, we got the seeds, we got the vinegar, the salt, and a whole head of garlic. You can do less if you want, but I put lots of garlic in. And then I blend, and it'll be really creamy. This is where it's up to you. You blend, and if if you like your dressings really thick, you taste it, it's gonna be, and this is where you start slow on the salt. You're gonna taste it and it'll just taste too salty or too vinegary, or it's just too thick, you don't like the texture. So what I usually end up doing, and this is why I say go slow on the salt at the beginning, I usually pour up to a cup more of oil in thereafter and just kind of stir it in. So at my final version, it's usually like 2 cups of oil to a cup of seeds to half a cup of vinegar to a whole head of garlic. And then at the end, I'll just lightly pulse or mix in, and this will work in a food processor pretty well too. If you soak your nuts and seeds, you can food process it. And I have a $5 used like garage sale food processor, and it works great. This I did in the blender. So then I put in herbes de Provence. You all know that mix. We have it in the market. It's a dry mix like this. It's an Italian mix. What we call an Italian mix. It has rosemary, basil, thyme, oregano, but then it has lavender flowers, and it is just delicious. And so you can just buy a couple tablespoons of that mix. I put in about anywhere from 1 to 2 tablespoons. Again, it is to taste. I really like the herbs, and the longer the herbs sit, the more they're going to infuse in the oil and the stronger the flavor. So the next day it's going to come back and taste even better. And then I crack a bunch of fresh cracked black pepper, and that's again to taste. I like it a lot. If it didn't take me so long to crack it and I didn't have a crying baby while I was doing it, then I would probably do a lot more. So so that's it. So you start with the 1 cup oil, 1 cup sunflower seeds sprouted, half of a cup of apple cider vinegar, a whole head of garlic, anywhere from 1 to 3 teaspoons of salt. You blend that, then you add more oil to the right texture, and then put in your herbs and your salt and give it a quick blend, or just stir it in. And the cracked pepper. Yeah, got that? Okay, so that's that one.
How long do you find that keeps in your fridge?
I eat it so fast, I don't even
You
know,
don't?
honestly. But with the vinegar, most dressings will keep, this will keep for, I mean, this was like a really big batch. Half those amounts I gave you, and you'll probably more of a family size. This is, I've had it keep for a week, but I've never had it tried. I eat it so fast that I can't keep it for longer than a week. So what I find with this is a great dressing to coat. So right here in our salad, we have heavy greens. We've got collards, we've got kales, we've got chards. I in my home salads will put in whole heads of cilantro and whole heads of parsley, and it's a lot of greens. It's a lot of greens, and for just a light, dainty salad dressing, that doesn't cut it for me. I really like. This is the kind of dressing that you put in and you mix it up, and it will make kales really delicious. Like, you'll love chewing the kale, instead of being like, how long is this going to take me to chew to get through this? So this is a really great coating dressing, as well as, like in this, you can see it's pretty thick. You could use that to slather on the bread and then put your greens on. And then I brought this one.
But you take the bread, you put on the live stuff, whatever you could find in the fridge. I added these roasted seeds and then the salad dressing, and this is going to be awesome.
And if you look at the bread, let me show you a piece of the bread. Just
Okay.
you can see that if you put this in a pan, that this would be if you do it for a pizza. A lot of times I'll bake it and I'll pop it out and I'll put this down and put the pizza here, so that the crust has kind of the pretty look when you're holding it up and you can see. And then you only have to just put your pizza stuff back on and cook for 10 more minutes or however long, and it'll be fine because it's.
Yeah.
So it's a great. I mean, if you do it really thin, you can do a 2-piece of bread sandwich. But we just really like it a big piece with tons of greens. In fact, it's mostly salad on my plate with a little piece of bread. But you cut it in long strips. You've got breadsticks. And if you cook it a little longer, you're going to get a crunchier breadstick. Or
Eat it with soup.
whatever you can think of that you would normally do with bread, you can really put time.
So you can very quickly get a lot of different variety out of the same base. And then even going to the sweet side, you can throw in raisins or dates or things.
One of them,
and you
this
can take
one has
this more to a
raisins in it.
dessert side. And so, and this one, we didn't have a lot of time, but we did 2 different sweet kinds, and then put on some kiwis because we had those, and then again this cashew-based frosting. And now it's a dessert, and it's very different. I mean, if you have these two things, you almost don't. You
You
wouldn't
don't
think
know
like
that-
I'm having the same thing twice.
Yeah, if you had this, if you wanted to be a little more formal, you could have this and a soup on the side for dinner, and then you have this, and people forget that there was bread in the dinner, and you serve them that for the dessert, and it's made out of the same batch in your blender, but you just put different seasonings in, and they just don't know. Or this, generally, I like to do as a fruit pizza. You can slather the whole thing with the pudding and then decorate your fruit slices on it and cut it in, cut it in pieces. They don't know that they're eating the same thing twice. So it can kind of save you a little bit of a headache in the kitchen.
So I think that's the whole presentation. We have all the things over here, so you're going to be able to play around and taste the different things. And there should be plenty for everyone here.